So, Rosie, over to you.
Well, thank you for that, and welcome everybody. I'd particularly like to welcome our guest tonight, Ben Tuppen. Ben, I heard about Libraries of Things because we heard about what was going on in Oxford and it sounded really good. And every time I was part of Wickham Environment Centre, and every time we had a meeting, someone said, what about one of these Libraries of Things ideas? So we got in touch with Ben and he was absolutely fantastic in telling us all about Libraries of Things. And so I've been aiming to get a talk organised for this. So tonight is the chance. Ben is part of Share Oxford, and the real objective of Share Oxford is to reduce consumption and waste. And one way you can do that is by communities sharing things between themselves rather than owning, which is why we've called it Borrow It, Don't Buy. Because if communities can share tools that you use 2 or 3 times a year, it doesn't bung up your home. And it means that these tools are actually getting a proper lifetime and everybody saves money. And at the end of the day, the number of new tools made, the number of old tools going to landfill goes down. So a little bit about Ben. He is project coordinator at Share Oxford, and he took over from the volunteer co-founder Morris in 2021. And he's their first part-time paid member staff. And I think it's always brilliant when a charity gets to the point where it can get a paid member staff because you can do a lot more. And he took on the challenge of building Share Oxford into a sustainable organisation. He's built the team, he's built the finances, he's built the impact, and he does super impact reports. Ben himself has worked in supply chain business and other parts of business, but when he got interested in sustainability and the impact of ever-growing consumption, he decided to look at what else was available. When the pandemic arrived, it was an opportunity to get involved in more community-based circular economy type of adventures like Share Oxford. But alongside Share Oxford, Ben manages Getting Oxfordshire Online, a scheme for refurbishing IT donations and giving them out to people who are excluded at the moment from being on the internet. So he's a guy who lives his beliefs, and we can ask him any questions we like about Libraries of Things, and I'm sure Ben could take questions on other aspects as well. So I'm going to hand over to Ben. Please put your questions for Ben in the chat, and Jane and I will field them to him as we find that's the best way to let everybody's question get asked. Thank you, Ben.
All right, thank you very much, Rosie. That's a fantastic introduction. You captured it well, the journey of how we ended up looking after the Library of Things here at Share Oxford. So I'll just get my screen going. And yeah, really grateful for the chance to talk through the story of where we've been so far at Share Oxford, particularly focusing on the Library of Things, and then what we've built so far and what our thoughts are on the future. And yeah, really looking forward to hearing your questions and thoughts. So I thought to kick things off, it'd be great either if people want to unmute and pipe up or put things in the chat as you suggest. It'd be great to understand what your interest is, whether it's general interest in Library of Things, if there's any particular aspects that you're keen to find out about, we can make sure we cover that, because there's so many little rabbit holes we can go down as we go through the talk. But I hope we have time to cover a few detailed bits. So do type in any headline thoughts that we can start off with. Whilst you're popping in any comments, if you do want to, the shape of the how do we store all the stuff? Excellent. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on the questions as they come in. And I thought we just as a headline framework for the next sort of 25 minutes, something like that. Starting with our mission, where did we come from? How have we got to where we are today? A look at the Library of Things in its current form, and then particularly for anyone who's interested in taking these sorts of things forward, a lot of the questions we get from people, as Rosie was investigating Library of Things up in the Chilterns, how do we think we're best able to make an impact, and how can it be sustained into the future? So we'll sort of end on that piece. Okay, yeah, some great questions here. They're absolute classics on storage, and all the safety piece, definitely one to touch on at some point. pricing is really interesting, and yeah, some thoughts on funding and decluttering my tools. So is that an offer of a men's shed from Eddie? I think we'll see what we can do with those. So yeah, really helpful starting points on lots of sort of specific pieces you need to get right for this to work, and that headline piece that actually there's a lot of appetite to share things in the community. There's benefit for those who donate their stuff as well as those who use the service. So yeah, as Rosie mentioned, our mission is really simple. It's reducing waste and unnecessary consumption that sort of goes hand in hand with that, with the circular economy mindset. And our starting point was actually founded by this lady, Alex, and then Morris, to be handed over to me, was involved as well in the Circular Collective. And if I've understood right, this was before my time, but the idea here was just catching stuff that's about to be thrown away, collecting it. Does it need fixing? Can it be fixed? Or if it's just unwanted, can we find a new home for it? So they'd started with this service going around Oxford, collecting stuff, saving stuff from the bin. And you can imagine quite quickly as you get into the repairing and recovery side, the question comes, well, why have we got all this excess stuff and what could be done about that? And hence the Library of Things, which I think the Libraries of Things are beginning to become more of a thing in the States, and we have the London one at that stage. So sort of early days of Libraries of Things, they set out on that journey 2017, and the Library of Things itself opened in 2019. So where we are today, we've got the Library of Things, and just to give a rough idea of scale, there's sort of 1,600 things have been hired out in the last year. The repair cafes that Caroline runs, they've done, I think we've fixed about 3.5 tons worth of stuff now. And you can see, about a ton a year of bikes, electricals, clothes, and lovely seeing more and more repair skills coming together, bookbinding, all sorts going on. And the community sharing is a new thing we're trying out, which is, it's with this idea of there's stuff that it's just people have excess and community groups go and get money to buy new things. So can we link those up again so that community groups that are strapped for cash can get their stuff from the community rather than having to go and buy it? And again, people know they can pass stuff on to a good home. So getting Oxford Online is a really good start in terms of IT, where we're breaking down that barrier to get the tech to people. We're hoping we can do more and more some simple stuff like getting fridges given out to food banks and things like that. People have spare ones, or passing on tools to help set up men's sheds and things like that. And yeah, before we sort of dig into the Library of Things, I think there's one sort of values point really that underpins the way we think about this stuff at Share Oxford. It's this point that if we want to have an impact beyond the transaction of someone hired a drill today, it's crucial we think in terms of inspiring people. And if you excuse a gross oversimplification of the politics of climate change, to try to hopefully this brings to light the way you think about it. So my starting point, introduced to climate change, really dug into it when I became unemployed in 2020. It's a scary topic. We're the ones that are to blame in the West. You go so down a bit of a tunnel of, I've got to give up all the things I love. I've become angry with the other people around me who don't seem to be noticing how serious this is. Whatever you think about the facts, it's not a very inspiring person to follow. And what a surprise, you then get the defensive person who's like, well, this isn't my problem. Government need to sort it. Technology will sort it. A surprising number of people go fatalistic. Well, we're all going to die anyway. So you've got this sort of anger, defense, unhelpful cycle going on. So we aim to be somewhere in the middle, saying actually what we're trying to do here is come up with something that's genuinely better. And if we're all having a really good time doing this, then maybe this is an ingredient of a sustainable world that people are just going to want to go to. So I can have more fun, I can have a more fulfilling life. And actually, I don't need that material stuff. And if I can show how much I'm enjoying myself, then hopefully other people will be inspired. So yeah, that just colors the way we approach it. And obviously there's a crucial point that we want to be there for everybody in the city. We're not just here for the sort of the environmental people. If you have one person bringing a pickaxe back on the bus from borrowing that, they're very welcome. Likewise, the people that turn up with SUVs and save a few pennies on some bits for having a really good party, they're absolutely welcome wherever you are, whatever choices you've made elsewhere. And we're just glad that you're part of this. So that's a sort of a key point that drives how we think about what we're doing. So looking at the library, where we've got to now, as I say, we sort of opened in 2019, and obviously straight into the pandemic was really tough for Alex and Morris to get things off the ground. You can see the scale of the number of things hired out per year. We've got about 600 things for hire. I mean, lots of those are little accessories that are just in the system, but it's definitely a broad range. We'll go into a bit more about that in a second. Mentioned the 1,600 hires in the last year. We've got 660 people who have done something, have hired something in the last year, and about 60% of those are repeat visitors. And it's really nice to see as we've grown the number of visits, we've got a healthy new growth of new people, but that scale of people continuing to use the library is growing with us as well. So really pleased to have that sense of that we're offering some sort of value beyond the initial hire. So yeah, mentioning the ranges just very quickly, this has been an area where, particularly because Maurice and Alex were just starting asking for people to donate stuff, they just went for it on interesting looking things, useful things, see what's out there, see where the appetite is. So when I came in 2021, we had about 600 things, and it was trying to understand what is the offer here and what do we want to be known for so that we can communicate clearly to the community. In the time since then, in 2021, I think the library of things as a concept is a lot better known, so people know to come and ask what we've got. But garden tools, it's all about the tools you're not going to use often. So it's really nice seeing No Mow May, early June, lots of people hire a strimmer once, tidy the garden up after No Mow May, and then they've got the tools to maintain it after that. Entertaining's really growing for us as we've tried to think about the range of having a really good party, sort of a step up from what you could do on your own. So the entertaining range, it can be gazebos and guest beds. The glitter ball is a real eye catcher. And practical stuff like lots of plates and bowls. And then the fun and games, we've got the candy floss makers really popular, the ice cream maker, sort of just fun things to have a go with that you might just use once in a while. DIY is obviously a sort of sweet spot that people would expect for lots of tool libraries, and absolutely it's the same for us with the drills and sanders and the stuff that commercial hire. It's sort of not, either they're expensive or they don't bother offering them, and we sit in that space making them available. Cleaning and repairing is a little bit different. They're generally hired out commercially, so we're not here to put Rug Doctor out of business, for example. So we set our prices a little bit higher for those, and for the same price as 24 hours from Rug Doctor, you'll have half a week from us, but we're not aiming to undercut so much as just that helps bring in some revenue for us, and it's part of the service that brings people in. The energy saving range it's a small thing, and we've had some funding through the council for some thermal cameras that have been particularly popular for people trying to understand what they can do with their drafty old Oxford houses. That's just an example of the sort of sharing the tools of the community and offering some new things, how we might work together. Camping is another one, very seasonal, but it's great that all the clutter, we can look after that for you and make sure we've got good quality kit. So yeah, that's the sort of, you'll see a few other wild cards like our unicycle in the thing, which is just a bit of fun as well, but we make sure we sort of have a great offer that really meets people's needs in these areas. Just to give a sense, I'm not in the library this afternoon, unfortunately, but to give a sense of the space we've got, you can see our office there and the shed, and we're in a meanwhile building that's sort of going to be developed at some stage. We hope we've got another few years there on cheap rent through an organisation called Makespace, who host us in the city. I mentioned I'm one of 2 part-time staff. You can see Christine with me at the shed there, and we feel it's really important to have that commitment and consistency. For the library to work, you've got to be there every day you're open, and you've got to have someone who's willing to make that commitment. Maurice, I don't think he'd mind me saying this, but it got to the stage where actually I don't want to have to be in Oxford every single Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday for this thing to survive as a volunteer. So hence the move to that sustainability of paid staff. But we absolutely depend on the volunteers to help us do all the maintenance, looking after the things, and in particular, and we haven't shown a repair cafe here, but the fact that we've got the repair cafe alongside us with all the expertise in that team has been hugely valuable, that we can have some real expert advice on how to look after the different things. And as you can see, we're a pretty small space, so there's that constant question of discipline on storing what we've got, and then the potential for more space and what we can be doing, what we could do if we had more space. I'm hoping I can bring this to life, but again, beyond the team of people at Share Oxford, I think one of the reasons we've been successful in Oxfordshire is we've got some really strong networks in the county that have been around longer than we have. And also fantastic that since I've been involved, there are now 3 more libraries of things in the county as well. So on the libraries of things side, Wantage, Bicester and Abingdon all have libraries of things, and we partnered with the council and this CAG Oxfordshire group I'll talk about in a second to launch them. So that's been fantastic to see slightly different flavors that the different communities need. For example, Oxford Wood Recycling and Abingdon, they've gone specifically for woodworking tool library to go with their recycled wood offer and help people get the job done. Vista and Wantage, again, are more like us. They're looking for a general community offer. But yeah, on the network side of things, which is where we sort of lean on everybody and learn together, the Repair Cafe network, we're seeing a huge growth in that. It's been really exciting in the last 18 months or so. There's, I should think, at least 4 or 5 new repair cafes across Oxfordshire. Caroline's amazing at supporting them with what we've learned. And again, the fact that we've got that pool of resource, the Repair Cafe movement is an international movement. I think it started in Holland. So again, there's backing from all sorts of people in that world of repair. CAG, the Community Action Groups, is an Oxfordshire thing. I think it's been running about 20 years, funded by the council. And it's a small team specifically focused on managing a network to support all the little community organisations focused on environmental activities. So I think there's more than 100 groups they look after now. And right at the beginning, it can be about helping you understand your risk assessing and your health and safety and the policies, get some insurance sorted out. At the scale we're at now, they pull together a network where we can talk to other people working in the circular economy space. They stay on top of who's new and who's arrived in the area. So they really help maintain that sense of staying in touch with the broader community when we're all flat out trying to deliver our services. And then the Waste Innovation Station there, the logo at the bottom left. This is a new scheme in Kidlington. There's a group, Cherwell Collective, who operate in a similar space around circular economy and understanding behaviour change to be more sustainable. They've had a big grant from the lottery, and we're a team of, I think, sort of 9 or 10 funded groups, plus a wider unfunded group all around the county, all aspects of circular economy and sustainable living. And in particular, that grants, we've got a few £1,000s a year from that, and that allows us to put more work into our impact analysis and really understanding what we're delivering and the potential for wider impact. Doing that again within a group who are working in a consistent frameworks, proving really useful. So yeah, it's there's so much in this richness of this partnership, and I'm sure you've got the same picture in all your communities. Come back to insurance companies as well at some point. And this is a really nice piece of work one of our volunteers has just put together for us to think about the scale of what we're doing. So I mentioned the number of hires there, and you can see we're based, you can imagine we're just there in Jericho, and you can see people do travel across the city to use us, but it's making us think if we were to expand, you really do get a benefit from the people who are just around the corner and will trundle down the road with a mower and use it and bring it back without having to use any transport at all. And you can see here as well, that sense that I think because we're sort of fairly early to the game, people do travel quite a long way to come, and they just don't want to buy things they don't need. Someone came all the way from Didcot just because he wanted a saw and he couldn't find anywhere else he could borrow one. So that appetite for people to be sharing in this way was just like the repairing. We're seeing it growing, and if we can deliver a good experience with that, the potential seems absolutely massive. So yeah, as we begin to understand the impact we're having and where we're reaching, this is exciting stuff. This next slide, you've seen the ranges we've got. In terms of what people achieve with the library, you can see everything here from practical stuff like cleaning a patio and doing your decorating. This is a really nice example of people being able to borrow a projector and a screen and have a movie night. It's something quite unique and special, and you're not buying stuff to do something that you wouldn't normally achieve. We see a lot of that as sort of fun, slightly crafty things people are doing. Have a go at a sewing machine. You see some lovely clothes people have made there. Took the rucksack out to Italy for one of my holidays. Again, it's lovely to not have to buy one that I'm not going to use very often. You've got the community apple press, which is really popular, booked out right the way through the season. And we've also got a smaller one for people to use at home. This is a really lovely one. This is a friend, Laura, as a primary school teacher with our smoothie bike. Just a lovely thing for kids at primary school to be thinking about energy and food and sustainability, but we've got some lovely bits of kit for that. And again, you'll see down here the seed library that library manager Christine's put together. So we've got people bringing seeds at harvest time and then collecting them again in spring. We also have a little seed plant swap, so people can drop in little seedlings, and it's lovely. You see kids coming back from school around the corner and, oh great, I'm going to take a spider plant home. And again, brilliant to see people contributing. And we've got a little book swap as well. So the informal free stuff that just a bit of fun. And this one I love. Most ingenious use of the thermal camera we've had is I think someone was looking after somebody else's tortoise and it ran off, and they discovered it under this bush using the thermal camera. I think that's the tortoise there. So yeah, it really is all sorts of stuff people are doing, from the practical to the fun, and we make sure that we've got a service that they can trust, and also an opportunity to do something a bit different and enjoy being part of it. It's the general blend. Okay, so it's probably a good time to quickly look at the next bit's all about the impact and stuff like that. So storage, you've seen our small office and shed, and we've kept ourselves to the one space. We operate on the MyTurn system, it's an online software platform for hiring, which is sort of designed for libraries and things. That works really well on one site, and it means people can walk up and ask us for something without having to say, oh, that's stored elsewhere, we need 24 hours notice. So for simplicity's sake, we've restricted ourselves to one location at the moment, and obviously that restricts what we're able to store. Yeah, electrical license being patch tested. We've just gone through a health and safety project, and we're looking forward to sort of sharing a bit more about that. But yeah, everything needs to be, essentially, we behave like a retailer, so our responsibilities on safety. If we were Argos giving out a boxed wrapped thing from a manufacturer, the manufacturer's got to make a fully compliant, safe product. The retailer just has to hand it over, showing that the box hasn't been disturbed. Because the box has been opened when it's used, we've got to put it back to that state. So we know it's safe, we know all the parts are there, we know the manuals available for the user, and we scan them all in and put them online so they don't get lost. So that includes a pat test to make sure that every single time it comes back, we pat test them, and that's part of our basic checks to make sure stuff's safe and usable. And it really is as much about making sure you've not lost the corner piece of a gazebo that got put in the wrong bag. So the service really depends on that check as much as the safety. We'll come on to funds and getting started in a minute. And yeah, so in terms of keeping track of what's in stock, the MyTurn platform, there's really two popular platforms that libraries of things use. One is MyTurn, we're on, from an American company. Another one, Lend Engine, the other libraries of things are using that, and it's from a UK-based group. And they do all the stock tracking. We've just got little locations for the shelves, and the system tells us where to put it back, and we're absolutely disciplined on the sticker on each item. It goes back in the right place. The team are excellent at staying on top of that. In terms of making sure we get stuff back, I think that's a great question. First point is we get people who forget, and you might have to chase them up that please come back as soon as we open tomorrow, because you're due to have sent it back today. That's fairly regular, once or twice a week, but I've only had to really chase someone up to get something back that they really weren't going to go once, and that was right when I started. And then that same person then refused to pay the late fees for that. But I think it really is just one person in the 3 years I've been there that's caused us that level of hassle. There's obviously an ongoing dialogue. People break stuff. Sometimes we go, yeah, that was absolutely on us. Sometimes it was clearly on them, but they don't see the world the same way. Because we don't operate like when you hire a car and you check out every single scratch and things like that. We don't have that for the scale of stuff we do. It's just not worth the time. So for the small number of times when we disagree on whether someone might need to contribute to replacing something, we see that as a cost of doing business. And yeah, so overall, the trust in the community has been excellent. Very interesting, actually, as again, working with other communities. That's, I would say, some other libraries of things have had more of a challenge with that. Stuff not coming back in bad condition, being smashed up. So very interesting as to sort of whether that relates to pricing and how much care people take, or whether it's a demographic issue. So that's something we're going to keep eyes on, particularly if we expand. In terms of insurance, I think we're currently with the Wessex Insurance Company. If you're looking to get insurance, like, the simplest thing I'd suggest is just give me a shout, because there's quite a few people trying to offer tailored insurance for our kind of services. So I'll keep you posted on the latest and greatest. I have a feeling Friends of the Earth might even be doing free repair cafe insurance now, so I'll be chatting to them in October. Yeah, and a good point on how long can people borrow things. We think of our setup really works with borrowing for half a week or a week. We open Monday, Thursday, Saturday. The default hire and the prices on the platform are a half week, Monday to Thursday, or Thursday or Saturday back to Monday, and you can pay an additional increments up for a couple of weeks. But we plan to have stuff that's going to be on short hire, and we're not looking at, for example, musical instruments. We had a few, but we're thinking really they need to be hired out for a term at a time. It's a different sort of thing. So we put our range around that shorter term hire. A workshop I would love to offer. We'll come on to that as a potential future thing. Again, some of the other sites have a bit of this, and it's one of the things I want to understand better personally. There are some good makespace organisations in Oxford and around, and that's an area I want to make sure we've got our partnerships right. And just on the PAT testing, yeah, this is one of the biggest questions we get asked. So everyone who does any PAT testing needs to be competent. So we make sure we've got a number of certified trained people, and then we have a paper trail to show that anybody else who's PAT testing has been trained by one of us. So that's how we demonstrate competence on that. But you don't all have to have gone through qualification. That's a good example of what CAG Oxfordshire, the network, offer. They pull together 10 of us at a time, can go for a PAT testing training. Of course, that reduces the cost dramatically. I think it's about £100 each for each person we send through for the certified training. In terms of the agreement when borrowing, that, if I see if I can do this, yeah, oh no, I can't. No, wrong one. On our website at the bottom right here, we've got the terms of use. So yeah, there's everyone sort of signs that electronically when they create accounts on the ecom system, and it just talks through our responsibilities and their responsibilities. So do have a read, and we've tried to simplify it, but it's a good headline for the agreement with what the commitments we're making and the commitments we're asking our customers to make. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that's a good point to go into some of the nitty-gritty operational stuff. And then just wrapping up, then looking at what impact we're having, how we know we're making an impact, and some of that behind the scenes stuff. We've seen quite a lot of groups who'll talk about the carbon saving and the money saving, and that's always driven by an assumption on, was someone going to buy something? And obviously, if our mission is to help people not need to buy stuff, we felt there was a really obvious key question we should start with as we started looking into impact, which is just what would you have done if we weren't here? And this is the results. As we say, we've got 140 people. We sort of ask new people when they arrive. So we're really pleased. About a third of people who use the library would have bought something. So that's absolutely hitting what we're here to do. And I think it was sort of a realization for me as I'd come in with my sort of climate hat on. Actually, more than 30% of people would have just not done something. They might not have been able to afford to, or it might have been too inconvenient. So really, there's this social benefit to the libraries, and we've realised that actually sort of seeing those two things in partnership, even if we might start delivering more social benefit, if that helps move society into this way of working, then the bigger picture is the environmental benefit comes in the past. And then we've got these other options. Again, if we're a convenience factor, that they probably would have found someone to borrow this from, but they know we're here, and for the sake of £5, they can borrow a drill and get on with it now. Buying secondhand, that's great. That's absolutely what we're doing anyway, and it's just an alternative. And people who would have hired commercially, we're sort of conscious we're not proud of that being the case. If we can save them money, but we've harmed someone who's very much doing what we're trying to do commercially as well, we want to make sure we're not sort of harming those who share a mission with us as well. So yeah, this is the sort of basis of I think my favorite example of the reporting I don't want us to fall into is one of my friends runs a peer-to-peer sharing platform, and he has his car available. People can hire that, and he claims £5,000 saved per person every time they hire his car, because his metric is how much money have they saved versus buying. So before we start claiming carbon savings and stuff, I'd love to understand, would anybody have actually bought a carpet cleaner or a heavy piece of kit before we claim that we've made those sorts of carbon savings? So we'll dig in a little bit on that and make sure we have a truly honest answer on that one. And then again, this is an area where probably best to just fire in questions, because there's so many elements going on behind the scenes. But I thought, in terms of something that is impactful and can survive for the future, just a few summary points really of what we'd recommend. the starting point seems a really obvious point, but when your head's full of environment and stuff not going to waste, it's actually, this is a service for the community. What do the community want to be hiring from you? And asking the right questions when you're setting out. I remember when again, it was before my time, but looking at some of the reports, people were just asking them, what might you like in a library of things? People come up with all sorts of crazy things that they might themselves use once, but that's a slightly different question to what might you and the community want to share, that we have a really active library of things. So getting that conversation going, getting a really good start point, building a range specifically around that, and then being able to communicate, this is what we can do with the library of things. Particularly in the early days, we found, because it was small and because it was a bit random, it's quite a big ask for someone to scroll right the way through our listing of stuff. But if we say, great, they've got a good gardening range, I'll go and look at the gardening, and they'll probably have a shredder or something like that. So clarifying, understanding your community and making sure you've got a clear range in communication. Then the team point, been very interesting. This is really a lesson from the other libraries we've worked with, is we've got our repairers, so we're ready to be flexible on a wide range of different stuff that very much fits what's in the library. The woodworking team are the perfect team to host a library of woodworking tools, because they will know immediately if they're checking in a circular saw which is missing its safety guard. They'll just know, compared to someone who doesn't really know much about it but can carefully look through the manual. The likelihood of someone making a mistake if they're not familiar with the products you're offering, and that could be woodworking safety, or it could be food safety. If you're handing out party kits, you want someone who just naturally makes sure there's nothing that's going to go moldy in the bottom of that stack of 50 cups. So yeah, the people who fit with your range is really important. All the operational stuff and policies, you've got your system and platform. We've touched on things like terms of use. Really happy if anyone wants to have a look at any of our policies around health and safety, or governance and things with the trustees, then by all means give us a shout, and we've got a stable foundation on that. Volunteer management's another big part of it, and making sure that liabilities are all sorted out with your volunteers. And then in terms of the financial sustainability, the decision on, what's your target? Are you aiming to be sustained by the fees people are paying, and the community, you're proud to have a service that the community, it's sort of semi-commercial, even if it's not for profit, and you can prove that it can self-sustain. If you're going to go for grant funding, we've had good support from the council. You can see the city council through CIL levies, which is the community infrastructure when there's an awful lot of building in North Oxford, which has been helping us out recently. The county council have a circular economy team, so they're really interested to help us pilot. I mentioned the National Lottery with the network, and the Network for Social Change gave us some early funding. We're really conscious that having that messaging right for a funder of, okay, this is a pilot, but what's the longer term picture? Do we always expect the council should be funding this? What's the justification? We're a relatively wealthy part of the city. If we're asking someone to fund us so that wealthy people don't need to spend so much money and buy stuff, we just got to get that really clear and get the messages right. So yeah, relationships with funders up front and getting your story right, getting the feedback, see who might want to be a longer term partner, as well as those early funders who want to help you get it started, presuming you're going to self-sustain afterwards. Again, happy to dig into more details on how we've done with that. Evaluation, I think my key message there is just like we did with our question, is if there are simple things like getting used to asking your clients, where did you hear about us? Why did you choose to come to us? What would you have done if you weren't here? Small questions that you ask up front, asking for the case studies, you'll get 1 in 20 of the people hiring happy to share some photos and telling you stuff. So if you get that going from the beginning, you'll have the evidence that you need for your funders. And then finally, that point on collaboration with the network. So who's out there, who's trying to do the same stuff that you should be working together, who's possibly trying to solve it in a totally different way, and you should have a chat about how that's going to go. That's been massive, and that's definitely something I can see a lot of potential, like the workshops I was talking about. Okay, so I hope those are useful sort of headlines, and we'll have a quick look at any last questions in a minute. In terms of where we're going for the future, we've obviously got lots of ideas on the waste side and the repair side as well. But in terms of some of the sharing things, so secondhand sales is a really obvious one. People want to donate their kit. We do start doing this with IT, that charities aren't able to use desktop computers for their beneficiaries on getting Oxfordshire Online. Donors are very happy for us to sell them through Share Oxford. So we refurbish them, we get them in good condition. That brings in some money, which helps us survive. The workshop space we touched on, we would love to work out that partnership, the idea that as well as borrowing the kit for yourself at home, why don't you bring your piece of clothes, your clothing in, use our sewing machine. Maybe Avril will be on site on Wednesday afternoons and she can help you do your sewing. Do we go and expand into multiple libraries of things? Obviously, we touched on that. And there's potential collaboration with the county libraries on that, talking to the circular economy team at the county, what could be going out through the county libraries. That'd be a wonderful win. There are some really interesting peer-to-peer sharing platforms, completely different liabilities and things like that. So keen to understand that. And that mode of really sharing with people on your street feels like some of those platforms could be an answer that no one bothers buying a mower on my street in North Oxford because we're all just signed up on the platform and we share it amongst ourselves on a little catalogue. Similar vein, the idea of some neighbourhood sheds, that the stuff that we want it to be super convenient. Maybe we could have people going around maintaining 10 little sheds of stuff that volunteers in the different parts of the city manage on behalf of their streets or something like that. Is there a different structure? So that's some of the ideas for the future. I can see a few questions coming, and I thought as well, by way of conclusion on the bigger picture on sharing, back to that inspiration point, for me, this is perhaps just some of the things that I've really enjoyed getting into the sharing world. It's really fun to be involved in projects like this. The repairing side's been a really big one for me. I was fairly practical as a kid, and then 20 years working in business, being busy, I've just lost my confidence on taking things apart or fixing my clothes. And I'm absolutely thrilled with some support. My partner's helped me put a patch on my jeans, and after 10 years, I've sewed up the pockets and my keys don't fall out my pockets anymore. Really simple stuff, but I get a lot of joy from just getting a bit more involved in that. I'm really interested in the innovation side, new products and how that's going to work. And again, I'm finding I'm just throwing stuff away, or not throwing away, passing on. Just having a simpler life is something that, since starting getting into this mindset, these are all things I'm really enjoying. So if we've got time, that might be an interesting thing to discuss, the broader point on lower consumption. But yeah, shall we tackle some of the questions? I think we're up to.
Do you want me to read out, go back to the top and come back through ones we might not have covered?
Do you want to open up the screen so we can all see each other? There's not that many of us, and it might be nice if we could just actually have a conversation, if you see what I mean. Allow people to unmute if they'd like to, and just talk. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Because you've already answered quite a few questions, so people have already maybe got their most burning questions off their mind, and I can imagine that a conversation might actually really get going, because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah. So shall we, if I just covered the last one, I think there's Rosie and Alan asked a couple of questions there. So yeah, the repairing team checking things and repairing them, absolutely. We've got a sort of librarian check that we do, and we're all confident that as a library team we can do our electrical safety checks. We can make sure that stuff's come back clean. But then, for example, we had an electrical pat test fail on a carpet cleaner. That then goes to the repair cafe team for the more advanced work. So we've got a process between the two teams for that. That's really important for us to have that extra level of repair support and advice, and we learned a lot from them. In terms of Alan's questions about multiple copies of stuff, we do have a few. So carpet cleaners is one. We had a couple of them. We bought a third one thinking this is popular, and then for some reason this year we're finding only one at a time is hired out. It's really useful for maintenance to have a couple. Gazebos is one. We've got about 6. They, sometimes they go out. All 5 are going out to a school fete this weekend, and they're popular. So yeah, and thermal cameras, we've got 3. So yeah, it's very much just the stuff that's hired out all the time. It's fairly simple to keep an eye, although it occasionally surprises us. But carpet cleaners, pressure washers, gazebos, drills, sanders, you could imagine some of the really practical stuff. Catherine's question, do you go out and look for equipment if we don't have something we're looking for? Yeah, so we've got a page on the website saying we'd love this stuff. This is where the community sharing section I mentioned at the beginning is something that we want to get more proactive on. So we're looking at the ranges and going, actually, would someone be up for giving us a better party speaker you can do karaoke on or something? Is that what the party range needs? Let's go and ask. A recent one where we went to the council with this CIL funding, we had some petrol strimmers and mowers and stuff, and they were our least reliable pieces of kit, difficult to maintain, all the safety around petrol, and obviously they're not a great sustainability story anyway. And the council put some funding in to help replace all of those with battery electric, and we went and took the project to go and see what the latest quality kit's like, and we've been absolutely thrilled. The quality's way better than what we had in petrol. People love using it, they're way more convenient. So yeah, there are one or two things we've been able to find funding for, and that more straightforward. We've had this weekend, our two biggest gazebos got blown down in a storm with all the poles wrecked. So there'll be a Facebook post coming out saying, anyone got a gazebo? So yeah, it's, you know, that sort of stuff. So I think that was our last chat questions, unless I've missed any, Rosie.
No, I think that's it. And so should we just throw it open? Is there anybody got a question they haven't put up or they haven't seen answered yet?
I'm just absolutely amazed by the fact that this just works. I couldn't really believe it, but obviously you've got loads of people using it and stuff is going out the door. Do you have some things which just don't move? And if so, what do you do about them?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And that's actually been a bit of a revenue stream, is obviously because it's all through the system, it's really easy to track. I think when I'd been there a year or so, we had 250 of the 600 things had never been hired by anybody ever. So right, let's have a look at what they are, what's going to the tip, because actually there's a reason no one's ever going to hire that. What could just be free cycled, and actually some of the things, like we had an electric guitar. It's thinking about the range. We had an electric guitar and an amp, but no cable. So we didn't have a nice kit to say, come and try an electric guitar. And actually we thought it's shoved in the corner with the gazebos. It's a bit random. It doesn't fit with our range. We sold it. It brought in £60, which is helpful. And it's lovely, actually. I only sold it quite recently. And the chap and his housemate are both going to learn the guitar at the same time. So that's the destiny for that piece of kit. That's great. So quite a lot of it was in that category of, kit that just didn't work in this hire it for a week and give it back model, but lovely, valuable stuff. It just was in the wrong home. So that's, yeah. And we've got a note. I had another look at the system. There's 50 things on there again. So it's time for another clear out.
You mentioned that some people have to travel quite a distance to borrow things. Do you have any scheme to help people get things to their place? So do you have a van or something that you can deliver?
It's a good point. I haven't mentioned that. We've got a partnership with Velocity, who are a zero carbon courier company in the city. So they can deliver within the city on cargo bikes. And they do have a van as well for our larger bits of kit, or if they're going slightly outside the ring road, they're giving us an amazing rate that's sort of, basically zero profit for them. And that's another example. We have a cargo bike, which the initial thinking was, let's do this ourselves and let's have some volunteers running that scheme. Because it's intermittent, or certainly to begin with, we just probably had a couple of deliveries or a delivery every couple of weeks. That wasn't enough to be interesting for a volunteer. So we didn't have a volunteer service. So depending on that commercial service, it costs people £6 each way. So it's, it's if you're only hiring a £8 drill, it's quite a significant cost, but it gets you there. And I guess compared to the bus costs and things, it's not that much. So yeah, we've got that option within the city that's actually proving increasingly popular. We're sort of 3-4 deliveries a week now.
How many volunteers do you have, Ben?
How many volunteers? We have the total number in terms of numbers on the books. Caroline's got a big register of volunteers on the repair side, and there's a community. There's at least sort of 40, 50 on the list, and I would say 20 or 30 who are really regular repairers. We have a couple of people per shift is really what we get to. So there's 5 or 6 volunteers helping out at the library. And actually, we've had a load of interest recently on the comms and digital side of things. It's an area I'm struggling to work out exactly how that team's going to work, but we've now got about 5 or 6 people working on social media, on graphics and comms, potentially improving the website. So hopefully some opportunity to do more on the online side of things as well.
We had a question from Chiara. Do you have any guidance or step-to-step guide on how to set one up, a website they can look at, and can someone come and see your library?
Yes, you're always welcome to come and see us. Do just drop me an email. And actually, yeah, I forgot to mention on that last page, through that CAG Oxfordshire programme, there is a link in our blog to a resource guide, which is just everything we've learned about setting up a library and all the gory details on what product we think is a good library product, what things suitcases, for example, we had in the library, took up loads of room. It's a bit icky to use someone else's suitcase for your holiday. People didn't want to do it, so let's move them on. So yeah, all that detail, more about health and safety and stuff. So yeah, if you look on our website for the resource guide, and it's also on CAG Oxfordshire's, and if we send the presentation around, you'll see the link at the bottom of that last slide.
Wow.
Hmm.
That's how long have you been going for? 4 years.
In 2019 it was started, yeah. So yeah,
You've-
we're relatively
You've gone
old.
a long way, haven't you, in that amount of time with the
Yeah.
learning and the amount of stuff you've got. And but you seem to have very little space, so it seems you're doing a huge amount with a very tiny space.
It's interesting. I think we look bigger online than we are in reality. And I think that, again, that's something with that inspiration point. We want to be trustworthy, and you turn up and go, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm expecting that I'm going to get a good quality tool, and these people are friendly and it's going to work, and that sort of stuff. So we put a lot of effort into looking like a trustworthy partner rather than people who are just sort of having a go. But yeah, we're still very much in the stage of, I didn't mention actually on the funding side, the reason we were able to sort of get started with paid staff was COVID funding. A lot of that city council funding was COVID funding at the beginning, which meant there was a pot of sort of £20,000 that was enough to hire me, and right, Ben, you got your first 6 months sorted.
Yeah.
That really gave us time to start building the platform out, and I can see we haven't ever gone through and gone, right, what pot of money would we have needed if we had a plan and went for it? But that gave us a sort of serendipitous, if that's the word, cash pot to scale into this stuff. And then again, I can't understate the amount of benefit we get from being as part of this broader community, working on repairing and promoting, each other. That helps a lot.
Ben, how much, obviously revenue from people hiring is big. What of your costs is that revenue now covering? And how much do you still need in grant support and things like that?
Sure. So yeah, we're just modeling with the hiring fees are about 2/3 of the cost of running the library itself. The cost of the evaluation, so the total share budget is about 43,000. Put 6,000 aside, which is sort of evaluation and this kind of overhead, being able to do this sort of stuff, which is the lottery funding, which is brilliant. About 4,000 is the repair cafes, which is very largely volunteer run. So that's just a little bit of overhead of the space, bit of my time and the health and safety. And then the library, if I've got that right, it's about 30,000, and about 20,000 comes in from hiring fees. We've topped that up with selling £200 or £300 a month. So we think that opportunity is there. So yeah, we're looking at sort of £10,000 for the library, £4,000 for the repair cafe grant funding.
I'm going to ask,
hopefully we can grow to fill it up.
what's the weirdest reason or weirdest story you've got about someone, or best story, most interesting story, or somebody hiring something that surprised you all?
Well, I think that the tortoise is a good one recently.
Yeah.
Again, stuff like the woman who brought a sledgehammer back, not a sledgehammer, a pickaxe back on the bus. You're just like, all of these things.
Was that for real? Somebody did that?
Turned back up and they're just like, oh yeah, the bus driver gave me a funny look, but it's all good. That sort of stuff.
I'm amazed they were allowed on the bus with a pickaxe.
Yeah, and I think the stuff coming to mind, it's lovely. I can think of a guy who borrowed a router, and he'd not used a router before. I think he probably borrowed our workbench as well, and he was thrilled. He'd made a loo holder, and it's only a loo holder, but he'd made it himself, and he was delighted. And he showed me a photo of it, and we get a lot of that sort of stuff. There are definitely more balmy things than that I can't think of right now. I don't know if Caroline or Alan can remember any. But yeah, it's really good fun hearing what people are doing, and there's a lot of joyful, oh, I didn't know I could do that goes on.
That's an aspect I'd never thought of. But if you're borrowing the equipment, then you can just have a go.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I want to see if I can make I don't know, something out of wood, and you can't possibly go and buy all the equipment you need, because you might decide in 3 weeks' time this isn't really for you and you don't want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And
I'd never thought of that.
People trying that works really nice. We also see people who hire stuff and they bring it all back and go, oh, I was too disorganized, I hadn't used it. But in a weird way, even that, they're committing to trying to get it done, and they, no, I'm paying my dues. You still hired it to me. So it's interesting what that hiring process asks of people. There's a chap who I think he has now finished his kitchen, but he's been coming back going, I need the jigsaw again, for weeks. And he's gone on, we've been sort of there by his side on his journey. So yeah, it's really, that aspect's really nice.
Yeah. So do you have a renewal system like book libraries, that somebody hasn't quite finished with it? Can they ring you up and say, can I borrow it for another half a week?
Exactly. So yeah, it is possible on the system. I need to go and see people struggle with that. So there may be some glitches there, but otherwise they drop an email in, and as long as it's not already booked by somebody else, then yeah, you can have that. That works well.
Catherine's got her hand up. Catherine.
Yeah, I was just interested, Ben, as to what difference you felt. I mean, obviously you're a paid member of the group. Do you feel it would have do other libraries operate just with volunteers, as presumably this one started just with volunteers? And do you feel that actually it makes all the difference? Well, it must make a difference, obviously, having somebody paid, but to what extent do you think that every library of things should have a paid volunteer?
Great question. Yeah, so for example, Bicester Green is entirely volunteer run. And they've been going a long time, and they've got a really solid volunteer base. And the shop, their library things is in a shop where they sell all the stuff that they've repaired. They've got a refill shop as well. So something about that model, they've got enough people interested as volunteers. I think they've just moved to getting a shop manager paid, or a sort of front of house. So I guess I see it as if you find someone who's like, yeah, I'm totally up for this, I will be there, and I'm going to be the key person. Again, I think Alan was involved in hiring me, and it was more that we haven't got that person. We might find someone who's willing to provide the money to get us going, and then we might be able to survive with the money. So it was that thinking of, is someone up for funding it, or is someone up for doing it? The key point is that the ask, and obviously if there was for a while just me being paid, I still depended on trustees coming and covering me when I was on holiday, and we very quickly realized we needed 2 paid members of staff just for the same reason. So yeah, it's the commitment you're asking of people. So Morris was happy to do that role for a long time. If there was a second one of him, we probably would have got further, and we just reached the stage where no one was up for it. So but it's, from my point of view, it's interesting. I would probably be the same. I'm up for it, getting paid. It's a really rewarding job. I think doing it as a volunteer, I'd just go, this is actually, a bit too much like paperwork sometimes.
Yeah, I get it. Thanks.
Caroline knows I love the paperwork, but it has limits. So.
I'm just conscious of our time, and I'm just wondering if I hand back to Jane. But before I do, can I just ask everybody to actually, since we're all can come off mute, can we give Ben a really big round of applause for, I think, an absolutely brilliant and very from the heart speech.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Really nice
terrific.
to have the opportunity.
No, really, really interesting. I mean, I think probably most of us had a basic idea what a library of things must be, but actually how it runs and the nitty-gritty of it, and actually quite a lot of complication, and the safety aspects, and making sure everything's back in its box and the instructions are available, all that kind of stuff, absolutely critical. Because if one person borrows something and it doesn't work, or they can't figure out how to make it work, that's they can tell 10 people that no, it's rubbish, you don't want to go there. So it's exactly. really, I can see that's really important.
I'd say hugely helpful. We've been running one in Godalming, but it's entirely volunteers, and we've only got something like 60 items in store at the moment.
Yeah.
So we're not, and we have a repair cafe as well, but we're not selling anything. It's all volunteers. But unfortunately, I was late to your talk, so didn't get it all. But picked up lots and lots of ideas from what you've done, which will help, I think, us expand our library of things and improve that. Yeah,
well, we'll be very happy to. Yeah, by all means, give us a shout as things come up. We'd love to work with you on that. That's great to hear. And congratulations making it work with volunteers. That's a huge commitment.